One of the hardest things to discover about people is that not everybody is truly loyal. Some people are only connected to you while they feel emotionally comfortable. You see, the moment they feel corrected, challenged, unseen, unappreciated, something changes. And today, I want us to talk about, I know not everybody knows Abner, because Abner represents something many people struggle with silently: validation addiction. That's what it's called. And that is the need to constantly feel affirmed in order to remain emotional stability. And honestly, a lot of adults are functioning from wounds that were never healed. What does Abner represent? Abner was powerful. Abner was strategic. Abner was influential. He was not a weak person, but emotionally, there was instability. The moment Ishbosheth confronts Abner, he switches sides, nothing immediately. And this is deeper than politics. This is emotional. Because some people do not know how to remain grounded once their ego feels injured. The moment they feel dishonored, and many people do this in their relationship. The moment they feel corrected, challenged, overlooked, not celebrated enough, the moment they feel emotionally uncomfortable, emotionally triggered, they withdraw, they ghost, they detach, they switch sides emotionally, it just shuts down. Why? Because their identity is tied to validation. And sometimes we don't get it, but let's go a little deep. Because many people who constantly need affirmation did not grow up emotionally secure. It's possible that there was inconsistent love, praise was conditional, maybe they only felt valued because they were performing, so their nervous system has learned my worth depends on approval. And eventually, the person becomes emotionally dependent on validation. They constantly need applause. They need reassurance. They need validation. They need admiration. They need emotional affirmation. They just need to be praised every time. And it's not because they are vain. It's also because internally, they don't know how to feel stable. And so this creates fragile relationships. How does that sound to you? Very familiar, right? Because if your self-worth depends on how people treat you, your emotions will constantly fluctuate. You need to hear me loud and clear. Because you see, the problem with validation addiction is that you are addicted to validation, and then that because you are struggling with criticism, with boundaries, with accountability. You're struggling with emotional discomfort. You're struggling with delayed gratification. You can't wait. You want it now. And why? Because correction feels like rejection, but it is not. And this is important because healthy people can tolerate discomfort without abandoning connection. You understand? But if you're a wounded person, you will often interpret discomfort as danger. So you run, you withdraw, you detach, you retaliate. And truth is that many adults are still doing this unconscious. And what's the impact on your relationship? Because you see, validation addiction affects our relationships very deeply because the person becomes emotionally transactional, meaning I will stay here as long as I feel constantly affirmed. If I don't, I'm out. But you see, real intimacy cannot survive if correction automatically destroys connection. There are people who cannot grow because every difficult conversation feels threatening. I've met people like that. And if a person cannot tolerate truth, they will remain emotionally immature. Now, how do you have healing? How do you begin to, what healing will look like will probably begin with identity. When your identity becomes internal instead of external. When you no longer need anybody to constantly reassure your worth. And this does not mean becoming emotionless. No, it just means becoming rooted. You become grounded. You become stable. You become secure. It means learning how to say, I can be corrected without collapsing. This is what we call maturity. And honestly, one of the greatest signs of emotional growth is that you stop needing constant emotional feeling from other people. You stop needing people to feed you. You begin to validate yourself healthily. You become less reactive. You become less approval dependent. You become less emotionally unstable. Truth is, many people are exhausted because they are trying to get from people what only healing can give. And no matter the amount of applause, no matter, it cannot permanently heal an abandoned identity. Eventually, you must become internally rooted. And maybe the real question you should start asking yourself today is, can I remain connected even when my ego is uncomfortable? Because you see, emotional maturity is not about always feeling affirmed. It is also about remaining grounded even when affirmation is out. And that changes your relationship.